We have the 4 dimensions, we understand them, and now it's time to move on to the next critical part or important part of service management is our system, right? Like our service value system, Chris.
You know, we talked about, Scott, at the very beginning of the series about how, what's new in ITIL version 4, and we did a whole episode on it, and I made a comment about how the life cycle of version 3, and then of course ITIL 2011, which basically took version 3 and just cleaned it up a little bit and dropped the versioning and things like that. But it still had that same 5 phases of the life cycle. And then I said the people kept treating it like it was almost like a linear thing. And the problem that they were finding, and I'd hear this from companies, was like, we tried ITIL. But, trying that you have to strategize, then you design, and I'm like going, whoa, whoa, whoa. No. You don't have to just do it exactly. You could have multiple things happening at the same time, and you might even start in the design because you don't need to strategize because you already did strategize. See where I'm going with this? And so that's why I said they moved it into what we call the service value system. Systems aren't linear. They engage and interconnect in many different ways. You can go different directions within systems. You don't have to always go forward. You can go backwards. You can go up. You can go down. You can go all around. So that's part of the reason why that ITIL has moved into this, we would say, more of a system, if that makes sense.
Got it.
Okay, so talk about this. The good news is that, I think it's good news. You only get one question on the exam about the service value system. Partly because I think they're like, it's so big. It is I call it the big burrito, right? It's like as you're going to see the diagram, it actually looks like a big burrito from Chipotle, right? Of course, I'm giving free advertising to Chipotle here. Or any of your local Mexican eateries will make big, huge burritos with lots of stuff in them. And now I'm hungry. Okay, service value system, let's take a look. The thing that we need to remember is that everything that's within ITIL is going to be operating within the SVS. And the reason why is because if you're going to do IT service management, and if you're going to do it well, you need to have some sort of system in place. And so what the service value system does in ITIL is it takes these inputs of opportunity and demand, and then through a whole bunch of different things, including the guiding principles that we're going to be talking about, the service value chain, the governance and the practices and all these things, it then produces those end results that help you get value, that value co-creation. And that's going to be, as you're going to see, the output that comes out the other side. Now, a couple of things. Every one of these SVSs that you have as an organization is going to engage with and interact with other companies and organizations' SVS. And it creates kind of like this ecosystem. And the plan is quite frankly, Scott, ITIL would like to take over the world, right? They want all organizations, IT-based organizations, which is pretty much almost everybody these days, to utilize this service value system because then it makes it so much easier for everybody to work together, speak the same language, utilize the same principles. And it doesn't, again, doesn't matter what culture, doesn't matter what, country or what product or service you're doing. Following this system is going to be very helpful, okay? So let's take a look at this. There's the little bottom point here, bullet point here. Thanks to Tyler for outlining it for us. And it says this: the ITIL SVS describes how all the components and activities of the organization work together as a system to enable value creation. I want you to also underline and highlight that in your brain, on paper, on your digital screen, because that's going to be possibly what they're going to ask you. Why do you have the SVS? What does the SVS do? And out of those 4 possible answers, again, not word for word like this, but it'll be something very similar to this, and that's the purpose. This is the purpose of the SVS. Now, I kind of paraphrased it and put it here on the slide, but we do have the actual official purpose right here. The official purpose of the SVS is to ensure that the organization continually co-creates value with all stakeholders through the use and management of products and services. So now you see where I kind of paraphrased it beforehand. So it could come at you any way, but notice the commonality in what I said earlier and what you see here on the screen. It's a way an organization, right, will co-create value, and it will continually produce the value with the other stakeholders using this system that helps produce those products and services that the people are looking for. Now, by the way, Scott, taking a look at this diagram, do you not agree this kind of looks like a big burrito?
Yeah, it looks like a burrito.
Okay, there you go.
A purple one.
Yeah, it's a purple one.
Purple burrito.
It's a grape burrito.
Grape.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll move on. Move on from this one. People are going to say, wow, Chris is fascinated. He is hooked on this. Well, it's getting close to lunchtime, I think.
Burritos.
Burritos, all about burritos. So here we go. This is the SVS. And so the service value system, take a look. It has both inputs and outputs. The inputs you're going to see, we'll talk a little bit about, opportunity and demand. Output, value. And 5 components, I'm going to say the word again, components that make up the service value system itself. Opportunity and demand are not the SVS. Value is not the SVS. The 5 components is what SVS is. And remember what we said in just the previous video. If you're watching them in order, I understand sometimes people pop around, but if you watch the 4 dimensions video, you'll notice that I said that the SVS operates within the 4 dimensions. So you can almost take the SVS and kind of plop it on that diagram going, yep, this is right here in the middle. It operates within these 4 dimensions. So let's take a look at each one of these in a little bit more detail. Not a lot, but they might ask you in the exam about components that make up the SVS, and is this a component of the SVS or not a component? So remember, very first, the input into the service value system, it's an input, it's not part of the SVS, it's going to be opportunity and demand. So opportunities are going to represent things like options or possibilities for you to add value to not only yourself, but to your customers. Remember, Scott and I have mentioned this a couple of times. Customers are not just external to your organization, they also can be internal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so don't get stuck on the customer and think, oh, it's the people that we're producing the product for, okay? I know it sounds like I'm really banging that drum. I do that for a reason, because a lot of people think that that's all what ITIL is about, is just producing stuff for the out. Well, no, the IT department, we support people within the organization just as much as we support the products and services that go out. So
Absolutely.
Keep that in mind as well. Okay, so we have opportunity, which is the possibilities, the options that can come up our way to produce more value. But also, those are typically, I like to say, those are things that we as an organization usually come up with. Not always, but the way I view it and the way I see it is kind of like, you know, Scott and I, we sit around and we talk about all the cool stuff that we want to do for Passion IT Group, provide better training, awesome stuff, new types of training, you know, how it can, you know, help you get that certification, provide value to you. Well, guess what? We might come up with some really cool things. Or let's say any one of you out there, remember, you can always shoot me an email saying, hey, Chris, have you thought about doing this for Passion IT Group? And I'd be like, yeah, that's actually a good idea. Well, what is that? That's demand, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're our customer. You're people that we're working with, and we want to make sure that we produce that value for you. And so we would say, sure, let's run it through the service value system, and let's see what we can come out with on the other side, because we're hoping, as we'll see in a minute, it's going to be value. So opportunity is things that most likely are going to be options or possibilities that the organization comes up with or that they see. Demand is going to be where the other stakeholders, customers, whether internal to the organization or external to the organization, are going to say, hey, we would like this, or we need this functionality now. That was good last year. We want this. Again, Janet Jackson mentality. What have you done for me lately? Okay, let's start off with, or finish off with what comes out the other side, right? Value, right? We want value. How many times do you think we've said value so far?
Countless times.
Countless times.
It's all about value, right?
It's all about value. It's important, right? Do not forget your definition, right? The perceived benefits, usefulness, and importance of something. And as Scott said several times, it is subjective quite a bit. And so that's why we need to make sure that we're using this system to produce that value that people think, yes, this is something that I want, okay? So value is the outcome of the service value system. But inside we have the components. Now the very first one, and this is a little bit of a review, we talked about all 7 of the guiding principles. And remember, they're more like guidelines than actual rules. They're recommendations that help organizations make wise and good decisions, help us, and by the way, useful in all circumstances, no matter what your strategies are or your goals or the type of work, the management structure, it really doesn't matter. They are universal and enduring, right? We know that the reason why we say universal is because these are used globally, right? I've seen the KISS principle used very much in Asia-Pac countries. In fact, I think they probably were some of the ones that kind of came up with that, right? So, you see these things everywhere, and they're also enduring. I'm sure it was, somebody back in the day saying, hey, keep your eye on the ball, right? Keep your eye on value. Even Henry Ford, I was reading a biography of the man, and one of the things that he was even talking about back in the day with the Model T is that, hey, cars, yeah, they're great. Right now, the elite people, all the big, muckety-mucks with lots of money have them. I want to make sure that, those farmers out there that need to haul their stuff to the market and they have to depend on their animals and stuff, I know what would give them value. An inexpensive, easy to repair machine that can do that. Okay, and now you're talking about that value, focus on value. And so everything he did was all about that. And so those are things that we would say, okay, cool. Those are the guiding principles. Remember, just we like to say, go and revisit our good friends. What are the 7 guiding principles? Focus on value. Right? Start where you are. That's one of Scott's favorites. Remember that. Then we had progress iteratively with feedback, collaborate and promote visibility, think and work holistically, keep it simple and practical, and last,
optimize and automate.
That's right. We love the automation, right? And so does ITIL, so don't forget that. Okay, so that's the guiding principles, and we already covered that. Then we have, of course, governance. Now, governance is the means by which an organization is directed and controlled. The way that I look at it this way, Scott, is that you have your governing entity. It could be a board of directors, it could be the C-suite, usually report to the board of directors, and depending on how it's all done, they usually go, well, you guys go ahead and do it. Or sometimes they want a direct hand in it, just depends. And what they do is they say, this is the strategy. This is the vision. I mean, that's really what the C-suite, those folks are all about. Vision, mission, this is where the organization is going to go, right? That's great to sit around a room and say, that's our vision. But how do you make sure that the organization does what you say it's going to do? Governance. And that's where it comes in. And governance can take a wide range of activities and things. You can have things like policies. You can have guidelines or parameters. You can have controls, right? So any of these type of things, and by the way, that's a whole other field you can get into in the world of IT service management and just in general, governance, risk, and compliance. GRC is a very big area for, again, you'll notice most people in those upper management roles have to consider these things, especially when you start talking about external governance and regulation and control, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So these are things that we have to look at. Okay, so think about this, though. We need to evaluate, we need to direct and monitor how our company is doing what it's supposed to. That's what governance is all about. So a few things about governance. Now again, they're not going to get into great detail. This is an ITIL 4 foundation exam, not governance, risk, and compliance course. By the way, if you do find this interesting and want to get more into it though, ITIL does talk about it in the Direct Plan and Improve DPI course, which is offered here at Passion IT Group as well. So you can, if you really like, oh, actually, I need to know more about this, Chris. I don't want this just little taste of it. I want more. we got you covered. You can go do that. But just to kind of bring this home here, governance in the service value system and why it's a part of the service value system is, a lot of times governance is going to begin, like we said, at the top. You're going to have the overall governance of the organization. But sometimes, especially in larger organizations, what the senior management or the board will do is they will say like, well, Scott, you're the senior vice president of IT operations. We're going to hand over the IT governance, as long as it remains under this governance, over to you and your team to develop, which makes sense, right? Because you know that aspect, right?
That's right, yeah.
So that's what you can do right there. So it begins at the top, but you could have literally it being set from the IT leadership and not just the senior upper muckety mucks, as I like to say. It is fundamental to the SVS, but it is subject to continual improvement, which means you don't set it and forget it. That's a problem that a lot of companies had back in the 50s and into the 60s. They said, hey, look, we set the policies. They will always be those policies. We'll never change. And then they recognize that, wait, why is the rest of the world certainly getting better at manufacturing and stuff? Oh, wait, maybe we should look at this and change a little bit. Okay, so that's a part of it. Uses ITIL guiding principles or tailors them as needed to meet the needs of the organization. And finally, it needs to have visibility into improvement activities and value delivery. Why is that? There's nothing worse than coming to the, I want to say the final reveal or even the prototyping of something and having all the bigwigs sitting there and you go, here it is. And they go, oh, wow, that's awesome. However, we can't do that because of X, Y, and Z. You didn't ask us about policies, regulations, anything that could happen, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm sure you've sat in on one of those meetings.
I have, yeah, and even as soon as a few months ago.
Yeah, so it's just like, ouch, it's like, boy, if we could just have taken that into consideration, we could have saved ourselves money and resources and people's, morale even, because there's nothing like, oh, wow, we were excited about this.
Yeah.
And then just have that, kind of kidney punch right there. And you're just like, oh, ow, I thought this was going to be awesome. So we got to think about that. So that's governance. So remember, governance is one of the components of the service value system, and just a few notes on that and what it is. This is how we direct and control the organization according to what the strategy and vision is, as well as external constraints of regulation, whether that's laws or policy or whatever that comes from outside the organization as well. Okay, next we see the core. So as if you're kind of getting down into the, kind of digging in deeper into the service value system, at its very core is the service value chain. Now, I use the SVS, right? And I say SVC. And if you're saying them really fast, sometimes you can kind of get them confused. Just remember this, the service value chain is a core component, think C, component of the service value system. So it is a part of the service value system. It's not a separate entity or its own thing. And it's not like you're just using, some people call it the SVS, some people call it the SVC. No. That is not true. The service value chain is, and we're going to cover this in a lot more detail in an upcoming video here. And essentially what it is an operating model that allows us to create those value streams. And the reason why we can do this is we can, take these 6 key activities that we're going to talk about in the next video of plan, improve, engage, design and transition, obtain, build, and deliver and support. And we use these key activities and we string a series of steps, the value stream, through the value chain, and out the other side comes the products and services and the value that our customers are looking for. Now, a couple of things that we want to kind of, at least, we'll give you kind of a sneak preview here, okay? Value streams, remember, describe the activities that an organization is going to do, a series of steps to produce some sort of deliverable that either then becomes an input to another stream or is the final output. We know that these value chain activities are going to use a different combination of what are known as the ITIL practices, which, by the way, We'll talk about those in upcoming videos, as well as here in just a second in the service value system. We know that these are going to be done either through internal or third parties, like in other words, we have our own, we use the practices, or if we're working with a supplier, that supplier will be using some sort of practices, and together this is going to produce the value streams, which produce the products and services, which produce the value at the end of the day. And this is based on the skills and competencies and the processes and the things that are put together as well. Now, the other thing that we need to know is that practices, speaking of practices, are another component. They are the management practices. We just kind of shorten it to practices, so that way you guys can remember that. The practices are sets of organizational resources designed for performing work or accomplishing an objective. Ding, 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 well-lit room. You might want to know that. It's a good definition.
Say it again.
Yeah, that's right. The practices are a set of an organization's resources designed for performing work or accomplishing an objective. Very, very important. There are 34 of them, and we are going to cover all 30. No, I'm just kidding. We're covering 15 of them. 8 of them just cursory, like, hey, what's the purpose? Maybe a definition of like what, what's an ITIL, IT asset, right? An IT asset management, and just real quick stuff. And we're also going to take 7 of them and do a little bit more of a deep dive, because we know that 17 questions come from just those 7 practices. So we'll definitely take some time to work on those. So we're going to cover those in detail coming up here. But definitely know that the practices are what you're using, a combination of practices in the service value chain to take those inputs and create the outputs, part of the value stream. And then finally, very important, something that I say is tattooed throughout the entire ITIL framework is continual improvement. So if you think about this, Scott, if you had to think about one of the biggest things that ITIL's pushing, CI is going to be it. Okay? So what is continual improvement? It's a reoccurring organizational activity designed to basically take you from one level and improve to another level. And that can be whether it's increased functionality, it's increased efficiency, increased effectiveness, or notice I kept saying increased. It's not always increased. Sometimes it's decreased loss, decreased use of waste, so you see what I'm saying here? In other words, it just makes things better. It improves things. Yeah. It's literally there. By the way, find this, not only do you have the continual improvement, this is why it's tattooed, right here, all right, part of the service value system, it's also in the service value chain. It's improve is one of the key activities. Oh, by the way, did you know there's a practice called continual improvement?
Go figure.
Yeah, go figure. I know, it's just crazy. Well, guess what? That's important too. So remember, continual improvement is something you will actually see in almost every single exam you take in the world of ITIL is going to have a question or two at least. A lot more in the DPI one, of course, because it's direct plan and improve. But you're going to see something that has to do with continual improvement.
Awesome.
Okay, so just remember that, and then remember the continual improvement model applies to the SVS in its entirety. This is typically where you take a look at what's known as the CI model, which we'll go in detail once we hit it in the practices.
Chris, I like what you said during the continuous improvement where you were talking about it's not always an increase in something, it can also be a reduction of waste, a reduction of friction for the customer, for the process. And I go back to the laptop story, right? We improved things, but we also took out steps along the way.
Yeah.
We changed it up, which reduced some things, but it was the process of continual improvement that got us better.
Yeah, it's always important.
That's right. All right, so we have a deep dive now, or we've gone through the great burrito. I don't know what else to call it. We've looked at the burrito. We'll continue with that theme. But now it's time to do a deeper dive as we move on to the service value chain in our next video, and we will see you there.